Imagine sitting inside a steel capsule no bigger than a family car, nearly 500 meters beneath the Atlantic Ocean. One moment you're carrying out a routine inspection. The next, a deafening crack echoes through the hull. Ice-cold seawater explodes inside. The lights flicker. The controls fail. Then, silence. Above you lies almost half a kilometer of seawater, millions of tons pressing down with enough force to crush steel like paper. Escape is impossible. Rescue has never been attempted at this depth. The oxygen gauges begin counting down, not in days, but in hours. Most people have never heard of the Pisces III rescue, yet many engineers still call it one of the greatest underwater rescue operations in history. Against almost impossible odds, a handful of people refuse to give up. Before we proceed with this miraculous and exemplary undersea rescue adventure, please support us by subscribing and sharing this video. But what really happened inside that tiny submersible? How did two men survive for more than 3 days in complete darkness beneath the Atlantic? And why did rescuers later admit that one tiny mistake could have turned the entire operation into a tragedy? This is the incredible true story of Pisces III, a battle against time, pressure, and the unforgiving sea. Today we travel beneath the waves to relive one of the most extraordinary survival stories ever recorded. This is not fiction. Every event you're about to hear actually happened in August 1973, when two men became trapped inside a tiny deep-sea submersible almost 500 meters below the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. Their fight for survival would test the limits of engineering, courage, and human endurance, while hundreds of people on the surface raced against a clock that refused to stop. As the story unfolds, you'll discover how every passing minute reduced their chances of survival, how rescuers repeatedly encountered setbacks, and how hope almost disappeared more than once before the world witnessed one of the greatest deep-sea rescues ever accomplished. On the morning of 29 August 1973, two experienced submariners climbed aboard the deep-sea submersible Pisces III. One was Roger Chapman, a 28-year-old British engineer known among his colleagues for remaining remarkably calm under pressure. Intelligent, practical, and quietly confident, Chapman had spent years working in dangerous underwater operations, inspecting pipelines and cables on the ocean floor. Beside him sat Roger Mallinson, an equally skilled British pilot and engineer. Mallinson had earned a reputation for his technical expertise and quick decision-making. Friends described him as cheerful, resourceful, and someone who could solve problems even when others began to panic. Please stay with us, let us know where you are listening from, so that we know how far our true stories reach people. Don't forget to subscribe and comment which stories fascinate you. This was simply another working day beneath the sea, a job they had performed many times before. Neither could imagine that, within a few hours, their names would become part of one of history's greatest rescue missions. The Pisces III itself was a remarkable engineering achievement. Built to withstand crushing ocean pressure, it carried two men inside a cramped titanium sphere, barely large enough for them to sit shoulder to shoulder. Every movement had to be carefully planned. Outside the thick hull lay an environment more hostile than outer space. Freezing darkness, enormous pressure, and absolute silence. Yet both Rogers trusted their vessel completely. They had descended hundreds of meters before without incident. As the support ship watched from above, the submersible slowly disappeared beneath the Atlantic, beginning what everyone believed would be another routine inspection of underwater telephone cables. The telecommunications through the ocean bed cables was a risky and tough job then. Both of them were experienced in this job for many years. But sea tides always may not cooperate this. In a way, every time it was unpredictable what and how things might go out of control. But deep below, an unnoticed mechanical fault had already begun a deadly chain of events. Within minutes, their ordinary workday would become a desperate fight against time, and the first warning would come without giving them even a chance to react. The descent into darkness, a free fall. At first, everything proceeded exactly according to plan. Suspended from the support vessel by a launch cable, Pisces III completed its task through the cold Atlantic waters. Inside the tiny pressure sphere, Roger Chapman and Roger Mallinson monitored their instruments with practiced precision. Every gauge showed normal readings. They exchanged occasional comments, But years of experience had taught them that silence often meant everything was working perfectly. Around them, the ocean grew heavier with every meter. Nearly half a kilometer above, the crew on the surface followed their progress, unaware that the greatest underwater emergency in history was only moments away. On its way back to the mothership, the accidental mistake happened. The impact had not crushed the vessel, but the danger was far from over. Chapman quickly checked the hull for leaks while Mallinson examined the life support systems. They made a chilling discovery. The submersible was trapped on the seabed. Even worse, the accident had damaged vital systems and reduced their available oxygen. Instead of lasting comfortably for several days, the breathable air was now expected to run out far sooner than anyone had planned. The tiny cabin suddenly felt even smaller. Every breath they took was now stealing time from their own survival. Calmly, they radioed the surface with the words every offshore crew dreads hearing. "We are on the bottom, and we cannot surface." The message stunned everyone aboard the support ship. Experienced divers and engineers immediately realized the gravity of the situation. No successful rescue had ever been attempted from such a depth. Powerful currents, failing weather, and the enormous pressure of the Atlantic would make every rescue attempt painfully slow. Yet somewhere in the darkness below, two men remained astonishingly composed. They knew panic would only increase their oxygen consumption. But as rescue teams across Britain and North America were alerted, another terrifying problem emerged, one that threatened to end the mission before it had truly begun. The race against time had started, and time was already slipping away. The race against time. The alarm spread far beyond the support ship. Within hours, naval authorities, diving specialists, and offshore engineering companies were contacted across Britain and North America. Every available expert was asked the same question: how do you rescue two men trapped hundreds of meters beneath the Atlantic? The silence that followed was unsettling. No one had ever faced a rescue quite like this. There was no proven procedure. Every idea carried enormous risk, and every minute that passed reduced the men's chances of survival. Below, the two occupants of the submersible fought a different battle. They checked every gauge repeatedly, calculating how much oxygen remained. To conserve air, they spoke only when necessary. Their movements became slow and deliberate. Even breathing deeply was discouraged. The cabin was cramped, cold, and completely isolated from the world above. Outside, the crushing weight of the ocean pressed relentlessly against the steel hull. Any major mechanical failure would be fatal within seconds. On the surface, rescue planners considered every possible option. Could another submersible dive to their position? None nearby was capable of reaching that depth quickly. Could divers descend? That was impossible. Human divers simply could not survive at such extreme depths. The only realistic hope was to use heavy cables and specialized lifting equipment. But first, rescuers had to locate the disabled craft with absolute precision on the dark ocean floor. As sonar equipment scanned the seabed, another obstacle emerged. The Atlantic weather was deteriorating. Strong winds and heavy swells tossed the support vessel from side to side. Maintaining an exact position above the stranded submersible became increasingly difficult. Even a small drift could throw lifting cables hundreds of meters off target. Nature itself seemed determined to frustrate every rescue attempt. Inside the tiny vessel, the men could do nothing except wait. They trusted the engineers above, but neither knew whether help would arrive in time. The oxygen supply continued its silent countdown. Every passing hour transformed hope into uncertainty. The assisting submersibles, Pisces II and Pisces V, were flown in by aircraft and deployed from the mothership Vickers Voyager to locate and attempt lines attachment on the seafloor. Final recovery. A cable-controlled unmanned recovery vehicle named Curve 3 ultimately attached the primary toggle and lift lines used to haul the Pisces III to the surface on September 1, 1973. Pisces V was brought to help the lifting the submersible, but its first attempt failed as the water pressure was too much, so it stayed with Pisces III to give them mental support. Next, Curve 3 played a major role to locate the Pisces III and link the toggle with the craft. The Canadian Coast Guard played a major role in making that possible. The main mothership used to carry and launch the Pisces II and V submersibles during the rescue was the Vickers Voyager. The submersibles were owned and operated by the British commercial underwater construction firm Vickers Oceanics Limited. CCGS John Cabot, the Canadian Coast Guard ship that acted as the primary command deployment platform for the U.S. Navy's unmanned Curve 3 vehicle. They played an enormous role in preparing the three-tier rescue methods, the final victory and miraculous survival. After more than 2 days trapped beneath the Atlantic, the men were closer to the surface than anyone had dared to imagine. The rescue crew worked with absolute concentration, knowing that the most dangerous phase was still ahead. As the submersible entered shallower water, it began to sway beneath the support ship. Each powerful wave made the heavy vessel swing like a giant pendulum, placing enormous stress on the lifting cable. Engineers repeatedly checked the tension, fearing that a single violent jerk could undo everything they had fought so hard to achieve. So a two-toggle with steel cables were applied to lift the damaged Pisces III. That decision was a key point in this rescue process. Inside the cramped cabin, Roger Chapman and Roger Mallinson could sense that something had changed. The movement was more noticeable now, but so was the struggle to breathe. The oxygen supply was almost exhausted, and carbon dioxide levels had risen to dangerous levels. Both men were physically drained, suffering from headaches, dizziness, and extreme fatigue. Yet they remained remarkably calm. They knew there was nothing more they could do except trust the people risking their own lives too. As the submersible finally broke through the surface, an enormous cheer erupted craft onto the deck, but the rescue was not yet complete. Everyone waited anxiously as tech finally swung open. The entire crew held its breath. What they saw next would become one of the most unforgettable moments in the history of deep-sea rescue. Against every prediction, the two exhausted men were still alive. Weak, dehydrated, and barely able to stand, they emerged into fresh air as their rescuers erupted in applause. They had survived one of the longest and most extraordinary underwater ordeals ever recorded. But this remarkable story was about to leave an even greater legacy. On August 31st, Pisces V could locate the Pisces III, but failed to attach the snap hook for lifting it. Next day, Pisces II could attach the strong hook and lifting line to the aft of Pisces III. Both Pisces II and Curve 3 could attach a multi-step hauling line that was strong enough. The final victory and miraculous survival. After more than 2 days trapped beneath the Atlantic, the men were closer to the surface than anyone had dared to imagine. The rescue crew worked with absolute concentration, knowing that the most dangerous phase was still ahead. As the submersible entered shallower water, it began to sway beneath the support ship. Each powerful wave made the heavy vessel swing like a giant pendulum, placing enormous stress on the lifting cable. Engineers repeatedly checked the tension, fearing that a single violent jerk could undo everything they had fought so hard to achieve. So a two-toggle with steel cables were applied to lift the damaged Pisces III. That decision was a key point in this rescue process. Inside the cramped cabin, Roger Chapman and Roger Mallinson could sense that something had changed. The movement was more noticeable now, but so was the struggle to breathe. The oxygen supply was almost exhausted, and carbon dioxide levels had risen to dangerous levels. Both men were physically drained, suffering from headaches, dizziness, and extreme fatigue. Yet they remained remarkably calm. They knew there was nothing more they could do except trust the people risking their own lives too. As the submersible finally broke through the surface, an enormous cheer erupted from the crew and servicemen who were present to greet them onto the deck. But the rescue was not yet complete. Everyone waited anxiously as Pisces III exit doors finally swung open. The entire crew held its breath. What they saw next would become one of the most unforgettable moments in the history of deep-sea rescue. Against every prediction, the two exhausted men were still alive. Weak, dehydrated, and barely able to stand, they emerged into fresh air as their rescuers erupted in applause. They had survived one of the longest and most extraordinary underwater ordeals ever recorded. But this remarkable story was about to leave an even greater legacy. A victory against the odds. When Roger Chapman and Roger Mallinson finally stepped onto the deck, they were welcomed not as ordinary divers, but as men who had survived the impossible. After nearly 76 hours trapped beneath the Atlantic Ocean with their oxygen almost exhausted, both were treated for dehydration, exhaustion, and the effects of breathing air laden with carbon dioxide. Remarkably, they recovered without serious long-term injuries. Around the world, Newspapers hailed the operation as one of the greatest rescues in maritime history. It was not merely luck that saved them, but the extraordinary determination of engineers, sailors, divers, and rescue specialists who refused to abandon hope despite overwhelming odds. The lessons of Project Pisces III transformed the offshore industry. Engineers redesigned submersibles with improved emergency systems, stronger lifting arrangements, and better communication equipment. Rescue procedures were rewritten, and offshore companies invested heavily in contingency planning. The incident demonstrated that human courage alone was not enough. Survival also depended on preparation, teamwork, and relentless innovation. Even decades later, marine engineers continue to study the rescue as a benchmark for emergency response in deep-sea operations. Whenever people speak of surviving against impossible odds beneath the ocean, the names Roger Chapman and Roger Mallinson are remembered with respect. Project Pisces III reminds us that the greatest victories are often won in complete darkness, far from the world's attention. Two men remained calm when panic could have consumed them, while hundreds of strangers united above the waves with a single purpose: to bring them home alive. Their story is more than an underwater adventure. It is a timeless lesson in courage, trust, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. Against all probability, hope proved stronger than fear, and that is why the rescue of Pisces III continues to inspire generations even today. If this incredible true story left you amazed, you're not alone. Project Pisces III remains one of the greatest survival and rescue missions ever accomplished beneath the sea, proving that courage, teamwork, and determination can overcome even the most impossible situations. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which true survival story should we explore next? Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and remember, sometimes the greatest battles are fought where no one can see them.